Human purchased dead planet for 25 cents, then found out why every previous owner disappeared. Before we dive into this story, drop a quick hi in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. It really helps support the channel. The holographic deed shimmered in Tyler Grant's calloused hands as he stood on the observation deck of the interstellar transport ship. Through the massive viewport, he could see it, his planet. A barren, rust-colored sphere hanging against the backdrop of unfamiliar stars, looking as desolate and lifeless as advertised. Tyler smiled. It was perfect. Final approach to Outpost Kappa 9. All passengers for Helios 6. Please prepare for docking procedures, announced the ship's AI in its monotone voice. Tyler tucked the deed into his pocket and gathered his few belongings. He had spent his last credits on this transport, but it didn't matter. 25 cents. That's all it had cost him to buy an entire planet at the Galactic property auction. 25 cents for a dead rock with no commercial value, as the auctioneer had put it. What the auctioneer hadn't mentioned was the peculiar footnote in the property records. 17 previous owners, all of whom had mysteriously vanished within 6 standard months of purchase. That footnote was precisely why Tyler had bought it. As the transport ship docked at the shabby outpost orbiting Helios 6, Tyler felt the familiar flutter of excitement in his stomach. After 15 years of exploring abandoned mining colonies and derelict space stations as a salvage specialist, he had developed an instinct for valuable mysteries. Something about this planet called to him, like a whisper promising secrets worth discovering. The docking bay was nearly empty when Tyler disembarked. A bored-looking Cetarian customs officer barely glanced at his documentation before waving him through. Purpose of visit to Outpost Kappa 9? The officer droned, mandibles clicking absently. Just passing through. I own property in the system, Tyler replied, trying to sound casual. The Cetarian's compound eyes widened slightly. You're the new owner of Helios 6? That's right. The officer stared at him for an uncomfortably long moment. Well, good luck with that, he finally said, his tone suggesting Tyler would need far more than luck. Tyler made his way through the outpost's cramped corridors to the supply depot. The station was one of those frontier outposts that existed solely to serve as passing ships and provide minimal support to the handful of mining operations in the system. It smelled of recycled air and cheap synthetic food. At the depot, Tyler approached the counter where a heavy-set human woman was inventorying crates. I need supplies for a planetary expedition. One person, 3 months, Tyler said. The woman looked up from her tablet, eyebrows raised. Planning a vacation on that dead rock down there? Her name badge read, Lauren Bennett. Something like that. I own it now. Lauren's expression shifted from mild amusement to concern. You bought Helios 6? The vanishing planet. Is that what they call it? She leaned forward, lowering her voice. Look, I've been stationed here for 8 years. Seen 4 different owners come through, stocking up just like you. None of them ever came back. Tyler nodded. I know about the disappearances. That's partly why I bought it. You're either crazy or desperate, Lauren said, shaking her head. Maybe a bit of both, Tyler admitted with a grim smile. So about those supplies? Lauren sighed and began assembling the basics. Water recyclers, nutrient packs, portable shelter, medical supplies, and survey equipment. As she worked, she continued to talk. The last owner was a Tyrellian geologist. She was convinced there were rare mineral deposits that previous surveys had missed. Before her was some rich kid looking for adventure. Then there was the Axorian trader who thought he could establish a refueling outpost. All gone. She paused, looking directly at Tyler. No distress signals, no signs of shuttle launches, no bodies recovered. They just vanished. Has anyone actually looked for them? Tyler asked. The Galactic Administration sends a drone every time an owner goes missing. Standard procedure. They never find anything. Lauren hesitated. There was one search team, about 5 years back. Mercenaries hired by the family of the rich kid. They didn't find him, but they didn't vanish either. Said there was nothing down there but dust and rocks. Tyler paid for the supplies and arranged to have them loaded onto the small shuttle he had rented. As he was about to leave, Lauren called after him. What made you buy a worthless planet that eats its owners, anyway? She asked. Tyler turned back with a half smile. I'm a salvage specialist. I find value where others see junk. He patted his pocket where the deed rested. Besides, it only cost me 25 cents. Hard to pass up a deal like that. Lauren shook her head. Just be careful down there, salvage man. I'd hate to have to add your name to the list. 2 hours later, Tyler was piloting the shuttle through Helios SIX's thin atmosphere. The planet looked even more desolate up close. Vast plains of rust-colored dust stretched in every direction, interrupted occasionally by jagged rock formations and shallow craters. There was no sign of water, vegetation, or any kind of life. According to the planetary survey attached to the deed, Helios 6 had a breathable but thin atmosphere, manageable gravity at 0.8 Earth standard, and temperatures that fluctuated wildly between day and night. It was classified as a Class D terrestrial planet, technically habitable but commercially worthless. Tyler landed the shuttle on a relatively flat plain near what appeared to be the remains of a small encampment, presumably left by one of the previous owners. After running through the post-flight checks, he donned a light exosuit designed for the planet's harsh conditions and stepped out onto his new property. The first thing that struck him was the silence. Not just quiet, but a complete absence of sound that seemed to swallow even the noise of his own breathing. The second thing he noticed was the strange quality of the light. Helios SX's sun was older and redder than Earth's, casting everything in a rusty glow that made the landscape appear as if it were covered in dried blood. Tyler began setting up his base camp, establishing a perimeter of sensor beacons that would alert him to any movement or environmental changes. As he worked, he kept glancing at the abandoned encampment nearby. There was something unsettling about it. Not just that it represented someone who had disappeared, but because it looked so undisturbed. No signs of struggle, no evidence of equipment failure or environmental disaster. It was as if the previous owner had simply stepped away and never returned. Once his own shelter was secure, Tyler approached the abandoned camp. It consisted of a standard-issue habitat dome, now partially collapsed from exposure to the harsh conditions, and several equipment containers. The habitat's airlock was sealed but unlocked. Tyler hesitated before opening it, suddenly aware of how alone he was on this empty world. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. He muttered to himself, overriding the caution that had kept him alive all these years. He cycled through the airlock and entered the habitat. Inside, the scene was eerily ordinary. A folding table with research equipment, a sleeping pod, food packets neatly stacked in a storage container. A tablet lay on the table, its power long since drained. Tyler connected it to a portable charger from his kit and waited for it to boot up. While the tablet charged, he examined the rest of the habitat. Personal effects were minimal. A few clothes, basic toiletries, nothing particularly revealing about their owner. The only unusual item was a small metal box tucked under the sleeping pod. It was locked, but Tyler had plenty of experience with locks. A few minutes of careful manipulation, and it popped open. Inside was a single data crystal and a handwritten note that read, "If you're reading this, I'm probably gone too. Look beneath the seventh stone." Tyler stared at the cryptic message, his pulse quickening. This was exactly the kind of mystery he lived for. He pocketed the data crystal and checked the tablet, which had finally powered up. The tablet belonged to Dr. Naomi Collins, the Tyrellian geologist Lauren had mentioned. Her log entries started out professional and methodical: soil samples, atmospheric readings, preliminary mineral surveys, but quickly became more personal and increasingly agitated. Day 12 detected unusual energy readings from the northern basin. Equipment must be malfunctioning. We'll recalibrate tomorrow. Day 15, energy readings confirmed. Something is generating power beneath the surface. No visible infrastructure. No explanation for energy signature. Day 18, found the entrance today. It was hidden beneath a formation of 7 stones arranged in what I first thought was a natural pattern. I was wrong. Nothing natural about it. Day 23, the tunnels go deeper than my scanners can penetrate. The architecture is unlike anything I've seen. Not Axorian, not Old Earth, not even progenitor design. Who built this place? Day 27, the shadows move when I'm not looking. I know how that sounds, but I'm not imagining it. Something is watching me. Day 30, I'm leaving everything in the habitat and taking only essential equipment into the tunnel complex. If I don't return, I've left a data crystal with my findings. God help whoever finds this planet next. That was the final entry. Tyler set down the tablet, his mind racing. Tunnels. An entrance hidden by 7 stones. Ancient architecture. It was the kind of discovery salvagers dreamed about. If Dr. Collins had found some kind of alien technology or artifacts, the planet could be worth billions, not 25 cents. Tyler looked out the habitat's small viewport at the darkening landscape. Night was falling, and with it, temperatures would drop dramatically. The smart move would be to wait until morning to begin his search for the 7 stones and the entrance Dr. Collins had mentioned. Tyler had never been particularly good at making the smart move. He gathered his equipment, scanner, light sources, climbing gear, emergency beacon, and a standard-issue plasma cutter that doubled as a weapon in a pinch. After securing his own habitat and marking its location on his NAV system, he set out toward the northern basin indicated in Collins' logs. The landscape was more difficult to traverse than it had appeared from above. What had looked like smooth plains were actually fields of loose scree that shifted treacherously underfoot. The rock formations weren't merely jagged, they were almost blade-like in places, forcing Tyler to detour frequently. All the while, the temperature continued to drop as Helios SX's sun sank below the horizon. By the time Tyler reached the edge of the northern basin, it was fully dark, and his suit's heating system was working overtime. The basin itself was a shallow depression about 2 kilometers across, featureless except for scattered rock formations that cast long, twisted shadows in the light from Tyler's helmet lamp. He activated his scanner, searching for the energy signature Collins had mentioned. At first, nothing registered, but as he moved deeper into the basin, a faint reading appeared near the center. It was barely detectable, the kind of reading most surveyors would dismiss as background radiation or equipment error. But Tyler knew better than to ignore even the faintest anomalies. As he approached the source of the reading, he began to notice a pattern in the rock formations. They weren't randomly scattered as he had first thought. They formed a rough circle around the center of the basin, with larger formations positioned at regular intervals. And there, at the northern point of the circle, was a cluster of 7 stones arranged in a pattern that was definitely not natural. Tyler's heart raced as he approached the 7 stones. They were identical in size and composition, each about a meter tall and positioned precisely in relation to the others. In daylight, they might easily be mistaken for a natural formation, but Tyler's scanner confirmed they had been placed deliberately. Beneath the 7th stone, he muttered, examining each one carefully. But which was the 7th? They formed a rough circle, with no obvious starting point. Tyler circled them several times before noticing a small mark on one of the stones, a simple line etched into the surface. Starting from that stone and moving clockwise, he counted to the 7th. Unlike the others, the 7th stone wasn't firmly set in the ground. With considerable effort, Tyler was able to push it aside, revealing a narrow opening beneath, a shaft descending into darkness. The shaft was about a meter in diameter, with smooth walls that seemed to be made of some kind of fused material rather than natural rock. Metal rungs were embedded in one side, forming a ladder that descended into the darkness. Tyler shone his light downward, but the beam couldn't penetrate to the bottom. All his professional instincts were screaming at him to proceed with caution, to return to his habitat, analyze the data crystal, prepare properly for a subterranean expedition. 17 people had disappeared on this planet, but the prospect of discovering what they had found, what had perhaps caused their disappearance, was too tantalizing to delay. Tyler secured a line to one of the stones, tested his communications equipment one last time, and began his descent into the shaft. The climb down was longer than he had anticipated. The shaft descended for at least 100 meters before opening into a tunnel. When Tyler finally reached the bottom and detached from the climbing line, he found himself standing in a corridor that was decidedly not natural. The walls, floor, and ceiling were made of the same fused material as the shaft, but here it was formed into a perfectly rectangular passage about 3 meters high and 2 meters wide. The corridor stretched in both directions, disappearing into darkness. Tyler consulted his scanner, which was now picking up stronger energy readings from the left branch of the tunnel. He marked his entry point on his NAV system and began moving cautiously in that direction. The tunnel maintained its perfect dimensions for several hundred meters before opening into a larger chamber. Tyler's light couldn't illuminate the entire space at once, but as he played the beam around, he realized he was standing in what appeared to be some kind of control room or operations center. The chamber was circular, about 20 meters in diameter, with what looked like control consoles arranged in concentric rings around a central platform. Everything was covered in a fine layer of dust, but otherwise appeared remarkably well preserved. There was no sign of decay or damage, just abandonment. Tyler approached one of the consoles, his excitement mounting. The design was unlike anything he had seen before. Not human, not Cetarian, not even resembling the ancient progenitor technology that occasionally turned up in salvage operations. This was something entirely unknown. The console's surfaces were smooth, with no obvious buttons or controls, but as Tyler ran his hand over one, it began to glow with a soft blue light. Symbols appeared on the surface, complex patterns that shifted and changed as he watched. The energy readings on his scanner spiked. Responsive after who knows how many years, Tyler whispered in awe. Who built this place? As if in answer, the central platform suddenly illuminated, and a holographic display flickered to life above it. The display showed a three-dimensional map that Tyler immediately recognized as Helios 6, though it looked very different. On the hologram, the planet wasn't a barren wasteland, but a vibrant world with oceans and continents. Before Tyler could process what he was seeing, a new figure appeared in the holographic display, a humanoid form, but clearly not human. It was tall and slender, with elongated limbs and a head that featured multiple eye-like structures arranged around a central point. The figure began to speak in a language unlike any Tyler had heard before, a complex series of tones and clicks. Tyler fumbled with his translator device, but it couldn't make sense of the language. He stepped closer to the hologram, trying to communicate through gestures, but the figure continued its incomprehensible speech as if delivering a pre-recorded message. After several minutes, the message ended, and the hologram disappeared, leaving Tyler standing alone in the now dimly lit chamber. He was about to approach the central platform again when he noticed something he had missed before, a door on the far side of the room, partially open. Tyler moved cautiously toward the door, scanner held out in front of him. The energy readings were stronger here, pulsing in a regular pattern that reminded him of a heartbeat. He pushed the door open wider and found himself looking into another tunnel, this one sloping gently downward. The tunnel was different from the one he had entered through. The walls here were inscribed with intricate patterns that seemed to shift and move in his peripheral vision. When he tried to focus directly on them, they appeared to be simple geometric designs, but when he looked away, they seemed to form complex, flowing narratives. Tyler made his way down the tunnel, which curved gradually to the right as it descended deeper into the planet. After walking for about 15 minutes, he noticed the air was becoming warmer and more humid. His scanner showed atmospheric changes as well, higher oxygen content, trace elements not present on the surface. The tunnel eventually opened into another chamber, much larger than the first. Tyler's light couldn't reach the ceiling or the far walls, giving him the impression of standing at the edge of a vast underground cavern. The floor of the chamber was smooth and slightly reflective, creating distorted mirrors of his light beams. As Tyler took a few steps into the chamber, lights began to activate sequentially, illuminating the space from the edges inward. What they revealed took his breath away. The chamber was enormous, at least a kilometer across and several hundred meters high. But it wasn't empty. At the center stood a massive structure that could only be described as a city, a complex of towers, domes, and walkways, all constructed from the same mysterious material as the tunnels. The city was built around and above a perfectly circular lake of what appeared to be water, though its surface reflected the light with an unnatural brilliance. "My God," Tyler breathed, overwhelmed by the scale and implications of the discovery. This wasn't just some abandoned outpost or research facility. This was an entire subterranean civilization. Tyler made his way cautiously toward the city, his scanner continuing to register powerful energy readings emanating from somewhere at its center. As he got closer, He could see that the city was organized in rings, with the outermost structures being the smallest and the buildings growing progressively taller toward the center. He reached the edge of the city and found what appeared to be an entrance, an archway leading to a wide avenue that ran straight toward the central towers. The avenue was lined with smaller structures that might have been dwellings or shops in a human city. Tyler walked down the avenue, constantly scanning and documenting everything with his suit's recording equipment. The architecture became more elaborate as he moved inward, with the buildings featuring intricate designs and what might have been artistic embellishments. Yet there was something unsettling about it all, a certain geometric precision that felt alien and mathematical rather than aesthetic. As he approached the lake at the city's center, Tyler began to notice small objects scattered on the ground, personal items, equipment, clothing. With a chill, he realized these might have belonged to the previous owners who had disappeared. He picked up a tattered jacket with the name Bishop embroidered on the breast pocket, likely belonging to the rich kid Lauren had mentioned. Nearby was a Tyrellian environmental scanner that could have been Dr. Collins's. Tyler collected these items in his pack, both as evidence and as possible clues. The central towers rose directly from the edge of the lake, their foundations disappearing into the unnaturally reflective water. The largest tower had what appeared to be an entrance at water level, accessible via a narrow walkway that extended from the shore. Tyler hesitated at the edge of the walkway. The lake's surface was perfectly still, reflecting the city and lights like a flawless mirror. There was something deeply unsettling about its perfection. Water should ripple, should move, should respond to air currents and gravitational forces. This was too still, too perfect. Despite his misgivings, Tyler started across the walkway. He was about halfway to the tower entrance when he noticed something in the water, a reflection that didn't match anything above. He looked up, expecting to see some feature of the cavern ceiling that was causing the anomaly, but there was nothing there. When he looked back at the water, the reflection was gone. Tyler quickened his pace, eager to reach the tower and get away from the lake. As he neared the entrance, he became aware of a low humming sound emanating from within the structure. His scanner showed the energy readings were strongest here, pulsing in that same heartbeat-like rhythm. The tower entrance was a simple archway, with no door or barrier. Inside was a circular chamber with a spiral ramp leading both up into the tower and down beneath the lake. The walls were covered in the same shifting patterns Tyler had seen in the tunnel, but here they were more active, flowing and changing continuously. The humming sound was coming from below, so Tyler began descending the spiral ramp. As he went deeper, the humidity increased, and droplets of moisture formed on his visor. The ramp took him down beneath the level of the lake, and through occasional apertures in the wall, Tyler could see that he was now surrounded by water, the impossible, unnaturally still water of the lake. After descending for what seemed like several minutes, Tyler reached another chamber. This one was relatively small compared to the cavern above, but what it contained made Tyler freeze in place. In the center of the chamber was a structure that resembled a throne or command chair, and seated upon it was a figure. For one terrifying moment, Tyler thought it was alive, one of the alien beings who had built this place. But as he approached cautiously, he realized it was a desiccated corpse, preserved by whatever environmental conditions existed in this sealed chamber. The corpse was humanoid, but clearly not human. It had the same elongated limbs and multi-eyed head as the holographic figure Tyler had seen earlier. Its skin, or what remained of it, had a translucent quality that revealed a complex network of what might have been circulatory or nervous system structures beneath. The being was wearing what appeared to be ceremonial attire, a complex garment made of a material that still retained a subtle iridescence despite its age. In one of its long-fingered hands, it held what looked like a control device, a rod of the same material as the city with intricate patterns carved into its surface. Tyler was so focused on the corpse that he almost missed the other occupants of the chamber. Arranged in a circle around the throne were 17 humanoid figures, each in a different state of preservation. With a shock of horror, Tyler realized he was looking at the previous owners of Helios 6, the 17 people who had disappeared. They were posed in kneeling positions, as if in supplication to the enthroned alien. Unlike the alien, however, they showed no signs of decay. They appeared to be perfectly preserved, like statues carved from the actual bodies of the missing owners. Their expressions were frozen in what looked like awe or ecstasy rather than fear or pain. Tyler's hand went to his emergency beacon, his finger hovering over the activation button. This was far beyond a simple salvage operation now. This was something that demanded official investigation, perhaps even military intervention. But before he could activate the beacon, he noticed something else in the chamber, a pedestal near the throne, upon which rested an object that glowed with the same blue light as the consoles above. The object was roughly spherical, about the size of a human head, and seemed to be the source of the pulsing energy readings. As Tyler watched, the surface of the sphere shifted and rippled, as if it were a liquid somehow maintaining a spherical form against gravity. Tyler approached the pedestal cautiously, scanner held out in front of him. The readings were off the charts now, showing energy patterns his device couldn't even categorize. The sphere pulsed in sync with the readings, glowing brighter with each pulse. As he drew closer, Tyler began to feel a strange sensation, a pulling or tugging at the edges of his consciousness, as if something were trying to access his thoughts. He hesitated, remembering the fate of the 17 people around him, but his curiosity and professional instincts drove him forward. The sphere seemed to respond to his presence, its surface rippling more vigorously as he approached. The tugging sensation in his mind grew stronger, and Tyler began to hear something, not with his ears, but directly in his thoughts. It was a voice, or perhaps multiple voices overlapping, speaking in that same unknown language he had heard from the hologram. Tyler reached out tentatively toward the sphere, his professional caution warring with an almost irresistible compulsion to touch it. Just before his fingers made contact, the sphere's surface bulged outward, extending a tendril of glowing blue material toward his hand. The moment the tendril touched Tyler's glove, his mind exploded with information, images, concepts, an entire language and history downloaded directly into his consciousness in a fraction of a second. He staggered backward, overwhelmed by the influx, his neural pathways burning with alien knowledge. Tyler fell to his knees, clutching his head as the download continued. Through the pain and disorientation, he began to understand fragments of what he was receiving. Helios 6 hadn't always been a dead world. Once, it had been a thriving ecosystem, home to the species that had built this city, the Valerians, as they called themselves. The Valerians had been an ancient and advanced civilization, masters of biotechnology and consciousness transfer. They had lived in harmony with their world for millennia until a stellar event, a massive solar flare from Helios, had devastated the planet's surface, destroying the ecosystem and forcing the Valerians underground. But even their advanced technology couldn't sustain them indefinitely in their subterranean refuge. Resources dwindled, their population declined, and eventually, only a handful of Valerians remained. In a final, desperate attempt to preserve their species, they had created the sphere, a repository for their collective consciousness, a kind of living backup of their entire civilization. The last Valerian, the one now seated on the throne, had completed the consciousness transfer and then died, leaving the sphere to wait for what? Tyler struggled to understand through the continuing flood of alien memories and knowledge. The sphere had been waiting for new vessels, new bodies to inhabit. And when the first human had discovered this place and touched the sphere, just as Tyler had done, the waiting Valerian consciousnesses had found their opportunity. With horror, Tyler realized what had happened to the previous owners. They hadn't disappeared. They were right here, their bodies preserved and their minds overwritten by Valerian consciousnesses. The expressions of awe frozen on their faces were the last moments of their human existence before being subsumed by alien minds. And now the sphere was trying to do the same to him. Tyler fought against the invasion, mentally pushing back against the alien presence, trying to take control of his mind. He had one advantage the others might not have had. His years as a salvage specialist had exposed him to numerous pieces of alien technology, some of which had attempted to interface with his neural system. He had developed mental defenses, techniques to compartmentalize and resist such intrusions. "Get out of my head," Tyler growled through clenched teeth, visualizing barriers between his core consciousness and the invading Valerian mind. The mental pressure increased, becoming almost unbearable as the sphere glowed brighter. Tyler could feel himself weakening, his defenses crumbling under the relentless assault. In desperation, he reached for his plasma cutter, intending to destroy the sphere, but his body wouldn't respond to his commands anymore. Just as Tyler felt his consciousness beginning to slip away, a new understanding came to him through the connection with the sphere. The Valerians weren't trying to erase him. They were trying to coexist, to share his body rather than completely overwrite his mind. The previous owners hadn't resisted enough to maintain their own identities and had been subsumed completely, but Tyler's stronger mental defenses were creating a stalemate. With this realization came an opportunity. Instead of trying to expel the Valerian consciousness entirely, Tyler changed tactics. He opened specific memories and knowledge, his understanding of modern technology, of spacefaring civilization, of the current state of the galaxy, while keeping his core identity protected. "I'll show you everything." Tyler projected the thought as clearly as he could. "But I remain myself. We share, or we both lose." The mental pressure shifted, becoming less invasive and more exploratory. Tyler sensed confusion, then interest, and finally something like agreement from the alien presence. The flood of Valerian knowledge continued, but now it was more controlled, more of an exchange than an assault. Slowly, painfully, Tyler regained control of his body. He lowered his hand from his head and looked around the chamber with new eyes, his own, but now with access to Valerian perception as well. The alien corpse on the throne was the last physical Valerian, the one who had completed the consciousness transfer project before succumbing to age and radiation poisoning from the stellar event. The 17 frozen figures were indeed the previous owners, but Tyler now understood they weren't dead in the conventional sense. Their human consciousnesses had been completely overwritten by Valerian minds that had then become trapped, unable to control the bodies properly due to fundamental differences in neurological structure. They were alive but paralyzed, their minds active but their bodies locked in stasis. And the sphere wasn't merely a storage device. It was alive in its own way, a collective consciousness of thousands of Valerians waiting to be reborn. The one that had attempted to merge with Tyler was merely the first, the guardian of the others. With his new understanding, Tyler approached the first figure, the rich kid, according to the jacket he had found. Up close, he could see the young man's eyes were open but unseeing, his face frozen in an expression of wonder that had transformed into eternal imprisonment. "Can they be saved?" Tyler asked aloud, the question directed both to himself and to the Valerian presence now sharing his mind. The answer came as a series of concepts and images rather than words. The process was theoretically reversible, but it would require a specific sequence of interactions with the sphere and the city's systems. More importantly, it would require the cooperation of the Valerian consciousnesses currently occupying the bodies. They would need to willingly return to the sphere. Tyler turned his attention back to the sphere, now perceiving it as the complex living system it truly was rather than a simple object. Through his shared consciousness, he began to communicate with it, explaining the situation as he now understood it. The response was not what he expected. The sphere, or rather, the collective Valerian consciousness it contained, had not intended to trap the previous owners. They had attempted to share rather than overwrite, just as they were now doing with Tyler, but something had gone wrong in each case. Either the humans had panicked and fought too hard, causing a neural overload, or they had surrendered too completely and been subsumed. Tyler was the first to achieve a balance, to create a true symbiosis rather than a conquest. And with that symbiosis came the potential for a solution that could benefit both species. Over the next several hours, Tyler worked with the Valerian presence in his mind to develop a plan. Using the city's systems, they could stabilize the trapped owners, gradually separating the Valerian consciousnesses from their human hosts and returning them to the sphere. It wouldn't be instantaneous. Each separation would take time to ensure neither mind was damaged in the process, but it was possible. For the next 3 days, Tyler barely slept, working continuously on the first separation. He chose to start with Dr. Collins, both because she was the most recent victim and because her scientific knowledge might be useful if she could be restored. The process was delicate, requiring Tyler to use both his human ingenuity and the Valerian knowledge now accessible to him. On the 4th day, Dr. Collins took her first independent breath in months, her body shuddering as the Valerian consciousness reluctantly withdrew into a small auxiliary sphere Tyler had helped create from the city's biotechnology. She remained unconscious, her mind and body needing time to re-establish full connection, but instrumentation showed brain activity returning to human normal. One by one, Tyler repeated the process with the other victims. Some were easier than others, depending on how complete the override had been and how long they had been trapped. The Valerian in Tyler's mind, which he had come to think of as Val, provided critical guidance, but also expressed growing concern about the future of its people. "What happens to you after everyone is freed?" Tyler asked Val during a brief rest period. The communication was becoming easier as they grew accustomed to each other's thought patterns. The answer came as a mixture of resignation and hope. The Valerians had accepted their physical extinction thousands of years ago. Their desperate plan had never been about conquest, but survival in any form possible. Now that Tyler had shown them a middle path, symbiosis rather than replacement, they could envision a different future. By the end of 2 weeks, Tyler had managed to separate 15 of the 17 victims, each now recovering in the habitat he had expanded using materials from the city. Dr. Collins had regained consciousness and was already documenting everything, her scientific curiosity overpowering even the trauma of her experience. The final 2 victims proved more challenging. They had been the first to discover the city, a pair of survey team members who had purchased the planet jointly several years earlier. Their override had been the most complete, with almost no trace of their original consciousnesses remaining. After multiple attempts at separation, Tyler and Val made the difficult decision to let them remain as they were, now fully Valerian in human bodies. With everyone who could be saved now recovering, Tyler faced a new challenge, explaining to the galactic authorities what had happened and what should be done with Helios 6 and the Valerian city. The planet was no longer worthless. It contained an entire civilization's worth of advanced technology and knowledge. The Valerians, through Val, made it clear they didn't want to remain secret anymore. They wanted to rejoin the galaxy, to learn about the civilizations that had evolved during their long isolation. On the 18th day since his arrival, Tyler gathered everyone in the expanded habitat for a council meeting. Dr. Collins, now fully recovered, had already formed a strong rapport with the 2 Valerianized humans, who called themselves Kel and Sorrow. The other survivors were in various states of recovery, some still struggling with the psychological impact of their experience, others fascinated by the possibilities presented by the Valerian technology. "We need to decide what happens next," Tyler said, addressing the group. "In a few days, the supply ship will arrive at the outpost for its monthly stop. We can all leave then if we choose, but that means deciding what to tell the Galactic Administration about this place." Dr. Collins spoke up first. "This is the most significant archaeological and technological discovery in centuries. The scientific value alone is incalculable, not to mention the potential medical applications of their biotechnology. Which is exactly why the GA will quarantine the entire planet and turn it into a restricted research facility," said one of the other survivors, a former mining engineer. "None of us will ever see this place again." "There's another consideration," Tyler added, tapping his temple to indicate Val. "The sphere still contains thousands of Valerian consciousnesses. They don't want to remain dormant anymore, but they also don't want to repeat the mistakes of the past. They're proposing a compromise." All eyes turned to Tyler as he explained the plan Val had helped formulate. The Valerians would remain on Helios 6, with the sphere as their primary repository, but they would offer voluntary symbiosis to scientists, researchers, and others who wished to work with them. No more forced overrides, no more lost human consciousnesses, only mutual exchange and learning. In return, they asked for recognition as a sentient species with rights under galactic law, and for Helios 6 to be designated as their homeworld, with controlled access rather than complete quarantine. The discussion continued late into the night, with various perspectives and concerns raised. By morning, they had reached a consensus. They would return to the outpost together, present a unified front to the Galactic Administration, and advocate for the Valerian proposal. The return journey to the outpost was surprisingly emotional for Tyler. In just a few weeks, he had gone from a solitary salvage specialist to the nexus of a complex diplomatic situation, carrying an alien consciousness and responsible for the welfare of both the human survivors and the dormant Valerians in the sphere. Lauren Bennett at the supply depot was speechless when Tyler walked in, accompanied by all 17 previously missing owners. Her shock turned to bewilderment as they explained what had happened, and then to cautious acceptance as Dr. Collins presented her preliminary findings and analysis. "So let me get this straight," Lauren said when they had finished. "You bought a worthless planet for 25 cents, found an ancient alien city underground, got partially possessed by an alien consciousness that's still in your head, rescued 17 people who everyone thought were dead, and now you're proposing to turn Helios 6 into some kind of human-alien symbiosis research center?" Tyler grinned. "That about sums it up. Think the GA will go for it?" Lauren shook her head in amazement. "Who knows? But I've been stuck on this outpost for 8 years, and this is by far the most interesting thing that's ever happened here. Count me in for whatever comes next." In the weeks that followed, Helios 6 became the focal point of intense Galactic administration scrutiny. Teams of scientists, diplomats, and security personnel descended on the planet, all eager to verify the incredible claims being made by Tyler and the survivors. The Valerian city was declared a protected heritage site, with access carefully controlled to prevent exploitation or damage. The sphere and its thousands of dormant consciousnesses became the subject of extensive ethical debates, with new protocols developed for voluntary symbiosis under strict oversight. Tyler, still sharing his mind with Val, became the primary intermediary between humans and Valerians. The symbiosis that had begun as an invasion had evolved into a partnership, with Tyler gaining access to thousands of years of Valerian knowledge and Val experiencing modern galactic society through Tyler's experiences. As for the ownership of Helios 6, the Galactic administration initially moved to reclaim the planet, citing its newfound significance. But in an unprecedented legal decision, Tyler's ownership was upheld, with the stipulation that he serve as trustee for both human and Valerian interests. The dead rock he had purchased for 25 cents was now valued at incalculable billions. 6 months after his arrival on Helios 6, Tyler stood on a newly constructed observation platform overlooking the northern basin. The 7 stones were now encased in a transparent dome, marking the entrance to what had become known as Valerian City. Below ground, teams of human researchers worked alongside Valerian consciousness partners, exploring the vast knowledge and technology that had lain dormant for millennia. Dr. Collins approached, now the lead scientist for the Helios 6 research initiative. "The first volunteer integration program starts next week," she said, joining Tyler at the railing. 20 scientists, all eager to experience what you and Val have. Are you ready to guide them through it? Tyler nodded. Val says the sphere is ready too. They've refined the process based on what we learned from the separations. No more trapped minds, no more lost identities, just true symbiosis. It's remarkable how much has changed in just 6 months, Collins mused. From a worthless planet where people disappeared to the most important cultural exchange in galactic history. All for 25 cents, Tyler said with a smile. Best deal I ever made. As the red sun of Helios set over the horizon, bathing the landscape in that familiar rusty glow, Tyler felt Val's presence in his mind. Not an intrusion anymore, but a companion. Together, they watched the first lights come on in the research complex, a beacon of cooperation between 2 species that had found each other across thousands of years and nearly incomprehensible differences. The vanishing planet had claimed its last victim. From now on, Helios 6 would be known for what was found, not what was lost. And that was the end of the story. If you listened all the way to here, don't forget to leave feedback about what you thought of the story in the comments, whether positive or negative. Your feedback helps us improve. Also leave your like and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this one. And I'll leave here on the screen another video that I'm sure you'll like. Big hug, and see you in the next story.